I'm Sam.
And this is Gabe.
And this is Coaster Wars.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Coaster Wars podcast, the only podcast where we take two coasters and compare them to each other. At least that I know of. Today we got an interesting battle. We have two returning fighters here today. Two coasters that we've already talked about in depth. This was probably going to be a little bit shorter episode. But we do have to talk about next week at the end of this podcast, which is going to be a very, very fun episode. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at here. Two coasters. Yeah. We're calling this Ejector versus Floater Airtime. Two roller coasters, too, which has never happened on this podcast.
Yes, not to be mistaken with our hybrid coasters, because they are two different things. And, I just want to say we are also breaking our top five. So these are both mine and Gabe's number 5 coasters.
There's one really interesting thing that I saw when I was looking at your top 5 versus my top 5. Every roller coaster in your top 5, besides your number 1 coaster, we've already talked about, which is kind of interesting. And then 3 out of the 5 coasters in my top 5 we have not talked about. And I think that has to do with the quality of roller coasters that I have ridden. I've had the privilege of riding some of the best in the country. And you have gone to Six Flags New England, which isn't. So, and then your true number 1 coaster isn't actually on this list. So I think there's another reason for that as well.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, just a little interesting tidbit I saw.
Yeah, we talk about, so the big one that really impacts my top 15 is my Hershey Park trip. And there, I think, are going to be 2 coasters at that park that are going to break my top 15. And yeah, like Gabe said, one of them is my number 1. So obviously, and I've talked about this in the podcast previously, in doing research and stuff, I really have to sit down and I think I need to revamp my top 15. But that is a project for another day.
Yeah, we might do, in the future, as we go to more amusement parks, we might do a special episode for our top 15s or what's changed in our top 15s over the last, 6 months or whatever. Unfortunately, I've only been to a new amusement park this year, where you have been to 3, which is not fair. Let me just say that. That's not fair. Oh, wait, actually, no, Six Flags Fiesta Texas was this year, but it was really early this year. So I've been to 2.
See, you're good.
And if you want to count Glenwood Springs as an amusement park, there's only 2 roller coasters there, but I guess you could count that one.
No, it still counts. It still counts.
Yeah. But without further ado, let's actually talk about some roller coasters. What do you say?
It sounds good to me. Introduce our fighters.
All right. In the red corner, standing at a height of 109 feet and reaching a top speed of 53 miles per hour, hailing from the farm fields of Ohio and the GCI gym, it is Mystic Timbers. In the blue corner, standing at a height of 165 feet and reaching a top speed of 72 miles per hour, hailing from the farm fields of Illinois and the RMC gym, it is Goliath. Let the fight begin. So, in this episode, I am bringing Mystic Timbers to this battle. We've already talked about this roller coaster previously, and I've already talked it up quite a bit. And this is why. It's my number 5. It's in my top 5.
And I'm bringing Goliath. Again, another coaster that we've talked about already. And I will say this, it seems weird that it's this spot in my list, because we did have a previous episode where I actually chose my coaster at the time over this one. So I think this will be a good chance for me to really lay into why I love this ride so much.
When we did Goliath, it was going up against Batman, correct?
Yes.
And then when we did Mystic Timbers, it was going up against Millennium Force, correct?
Yes.
I don't know.
Um,
Viewers, tell me if I'm wrong or not. Comment down below if I'm stupid.
right? It's
Um,
so I've listened to other podcasts and I now understand why it is so hard to keep all the episodes straight, especially if you're recording like ahead of the episodes that are being released. So it's so hard to think about, okay, we've recorded this episode, but it's not released to you guys yet. And it makes things very confusing sometimes.
for sure. For sure. But yeah, so I believe Goliath was a split decision and Mystic Timbers was well that was unanimous. Me and you both picked Mystic Timbers over Millennium Force. I do know that for sure. So that
Yes.
really goes to show how good of a roller coaster Mystic Timbers is. Let's just dive right into it. Let's just do it. Let's just get going here. So Mystic Timbers is a GCI roller coaster, and it was constructed in 2017. So it is one of the newest GCIs out there. And out of the GCIs that I've ridden, which is only two, two, it's the best. It's one of the best wooden roller coasters out there. But comparing it to Goliath, guess what? Goliath is also technically a fully wooden roller coaster, which is interesting. It's the first battle we've had on this podcast featuring exclusively wooden roller coasters. And these are two of the best in the world at what they do.
Oh yeah. With Mystic Timbers, I guess the biggest difference between these two coasters would be probably the inversion aspect. And with Mystic Timbers, I mean, you always think about how much more intense an inversion roller coaster, and then with RMCs, like specifically, like it is such a combination between floater and ejector that it gives you an amazingly intense ride. Mystic Timbers manages to do that without a single inversion on the entire ride. It is a pacing machine.
Yeah, the other thing too about this roller coaster, Mystic Timbers versus Goliath, the overall height difference. You're talking almost 80 feet in difference for their drops. So, and you're talking almost a 20-mile-an-hour speed difference as well. And the fact that both of these roller coasters are pacing monsters shows that you don't always need a 180-foot drop to get a thrilling, fast-paced, exciting experience, which is what Mystic Timbers is. Mystic Timbers has insane pacing for what it is.
Oh yeah, this ride, me and Gabe mentioned this in the previous episode. This ride sort of blindsided us when we went to Kings Island. We were ready for all of the coasters, and we knew this was a traditional GCI Woody. And we're like, all right, let's knock this credit out of the park. Let's go see what this coaster is all about. And we got off of it, and we're just like, oh my gosh, how did we not know about thing? Honestly an amazing ride. It was so good. Me and Gabe rode it multiple times that day, and then Gabe ended up actually buying a t-shirt for it. He's like, this is earning t-shirt status.
Oh, absolutely. I love this ride. Mystic Timbers is one of my personal favorites. Like I said, for what it is and what it does to you, it blows you out of the park. It's one of the best wooden roller coasters I've ever ridden. It's one of the more conventional wooden roller coasters. Not a lot of companies build roller coasters like this anymore. RMC has the hybrid and the steel topper track. You got Gravity Group. They're starting to do their Titan track, which is really similar to the hybrid track of RMC. And then other than that, that's all you really have out there building classic style wooden roller coasters. I mean, everybody's kind of gone away from it. The only other company that really, attempts to do it would be Intamin with their prefabs, but that's still not a traditional wooden roller coaster. And they've only built 4 of them, and I don't think anyone is coming anytime soon. So that's what GCI specializes in, is wooden roller coasters, and they have perfected their craft, honestly, with this roller coaster. But with that, let's dive right into the layout of this roller coaster. So this roller coaster, like I said, is a 109-foot tall lift hill. I believe the drop comes out to almost 100 feet even. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, so you come up the lift hill. Is it 98? Okay.
Yep.
You drop down, and as you drop down, it twists to the left, which is not my favorite. But other than the first drop on this roller coaster, I love it. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to my first drops. I want them to be steep and straight and not upside down. Sorry, RMC, but that's just the truth. Anyway, so you drop off, you twist to the right, and you hit a really nice G-force filled pullout as you pop up into the first airtime pop. And it's kind of like a double up type feature, which is a lot of the quote unquote airtime hills on this roller coaster are not airtime hills. They kind of like pop up and then they pop up a little more and then they go down, and they're not just a straight up and then down. So anyway, you drop down and you make another slight right before popping up into another airtime hill, followed by another airtime hill, followed by a twisty airtime hill, followed by a twisty airtime hill, followed by another airtime hill, followed by another airtime hill, and eventually you make it all the way out to the turnaround, which is covered by a tunnel. And it is a 100-degree banked airtime hill, which kind of goes downhill towards the end of it, which gives you another really good dose of G-forces. And then you hit another airtime hill, followed by another airtime hill, followed by another twist, by another airtime hill. Okay, yeah, this roller coaster is all airtime hills, apparently. Before popping up into the final brakes and into the shed. That's literally the gist of this layout. It's just airtime hill, followed by twist, followed by airtime hill, followed by twist. It's simple, but very effective.
Oh yeah, and in case you weren't counting all of those airtime hills, there's a grand total of 16 separate airtime hills in between all of those twists and those turns. It is an absolutely insane number to me. It does that in 3,265 feet of track. That amount of airtime hills seems to me like it should be like 5,000 feet of track at least. And no, it fits all of that into this ball. And like we said, with pacing is insane on this machine. It just runs you through this layout so freaking fast, and you have no time to just think about what happened to you. You need to ride this coaster multiple times to just like be able to take in what it actually is.
Oh, absolutely. But that's what I love about this roller coaster is it takes the classic idea of what a wooden roller coaster is, which is just airtime hills. I mean, if you've ridden the Beast, if you've ridden American Eagle, if you've ridden any wooden roller coaster ever, they don't go upside down. They don't go very fast sometimes. Maybe their top speed's only 45, 50 miles an hour. You know, they're not a stat monster. They're never the biggest. They're never the tallest. They just kind of pop around, do some airtime hills, do some turns, and they're fun. They're exciting. They're rough. But Mystic Timbers takes it to that next level. It really shows that even though wooden roller coasters in the past have been tame or have been rough or uncomfortable or whatever you want to call a bad wooden roller coaster, forceless, that's another word people would use, Mystic Timbers says, hey, wait a minute, we can take some wooden track and some wooden supports and put out a roller coaster that you can be considered in the elite category. And that's really where I'd put this roller coaster. I wouldn't quite put it into the ultra elite quite yet. I do have it in my top 5, but that's only out of 100 roller coasters. So I think that would be unfair to do that. But I would put this in the elite category. It is one of the better wooden roller coasters in the world. And I love this layout from start to finish. And like you said, 16 moments of airtime. And some of them are better than others, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it's just the pacing. It's the overall pacing of this roller coaster that really blows it out of the water. It stays so low to the ground. Even the airtime moments are maybe only 10 or 15 feet above ground level. And what that does is it allows the train to carry the 53 miles per hour all the way through until you hit the final brakes, which is not something most wooden roller coasters do.
And we talk about, so like talking about how many airtime hills this roller coaster has, but we still say, oh my gosh, I can't talk. Say that has amazing pacing and all this, to compare it to something that we kind of knock for only having airtime hills, like Steel Vengeance. We're like, it's too quick. And so it speaks to the amazing pacing that this ride is and how GCI managed to hit that sweet spot, that it doesn't feel like it's just quick pop, and it's not sustained. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's better in my book than Steel Vengeance, and it speaks to the caliber of this ride.
What they do with it is there's moments of airtime pops, but there's also, I want to say I can think of at least 4 or 5 moments where it is sustained floater airtime. Like you feel it for multiple seconds while you're in the element. So they do a good job of mixing that in.
Okay.
The other thing that I love about this roller coaster that we haven't talked about yet is the laterals, which puts it on another level. See, a lot of roller coasters out there, at least older ones, they focus on one specific force at one specific time. So you're going to get airtime hills, or you're going to get a turn or a pullout, so you get G-forces, or you'll get a transition where you'll get laterals and that's it. Or, you get what I'm saying, where you only get one force at one time. What this roller coaster does is not only does it pop you up in the air, but it also says, oh, I'm going to take a right-hand turn here, and next thing you know, I'm slamming my shoulder, not slamming, but I'm getting thrown, left and right as well as up. So it combines laterals and airtime into one element, and you get them at the same time, which makes it feel like a more out-of-control experience than a typical wooden roller coaster.
That makes a lot of sense, because we were in our Steel Vengeance episode, we were talking about how it just feels like it's the same thing over and over and over again, and this ride manages to mix up those forces so that it doesn't feel like it's doing the same thing every single time you go over every one of those 16 airtime hills.
Absolutely. And like I said, this was built in 2017. So it's definitely a modern roller coaster. Let's keep that in mind. It's a lot newer than some of the roller coasters that were wooden built in like the 70s and 80s when they didn't have technology. So that's why it is so good, because it is new. But I love this roller coaster. I can talk about this thing all day long. There's a reason it's in my top 5, because it is, at the end of the day, one of the coasters that I love the most. And like you said too at the beginning, it's a coaster that surprised us, which is another thing I love. I love being surprised. I love being like, holy cow, wait a minute, this is like something else. Like I knew this was a coaster, but man, this is a coaster. Like,
yes.
That's the best way to describe it.
But with that, I think we need to oh my gosh! Transition over to my coaster. Cheese and crackers.
Do we need to get like a vocal coach for you, or a speech coach or something? Like,
I'm starting to think I need one, because goodness gracious, do I fumble over my words every second. Alright, so Goliath is an RMC, and it's specifically their steel topper track. And so when we talk about RMCs, a lot of their coasters are their hybrid iBox tracks. And this one is a traditional wooden roller coaster fabrication. And on top of that, it's also one of, oh my gosh, Coco, 1 second. My cat is being annoying. So this is also one of RMC's first ground up builds. And so that also makes this a really unique ride experience. RMCs in general are basically refurbishments. It's not the right word. They take over old wooden roller coasters and they reuse supports and they reuse the station and such, but they sort of regrade things, revamp some of the elements, and then they generally add inversions. And so this is really interesting in that it's not that. It was completely ground up builds. And we talk about it in some of our other episodes when we talk about Six Flags Great America. It kind of became the testing ground for other prototypes and stuff. And so that's how this ride kind of ended up here. And then at the same time, unfortunately, we think it falls into the background. It doesn't get noticed as much because of the like crazy lineup that Six Flags does have.
Yeah, the thing like we talked about a little bit in the last podcast, but I don't think we touched on it enough, is that this is one of the most unique wooden roller coasters in the world. It is crazy how individual this roller coaster is, because RMC number one, they don't do a ton of ground up constructions. Number two, they don't do a ton of the steel topper track fully wooden roller coasters. And number 3, how many wooden roller coasters have multiple inversions? I know it's only
Mm-hmm.
2, but that counts as multiple. Like,
Yep.
and I think the other thing we didn't talk about with this roller coaster is how intimidating this thing is when you walk up to it,
Oh my
and that is
gosh.
because the lift hill and the zero G stall are actually supported by steel, which just gives this thing such an angry look to it. Like, this coaster just looks pissed off sometimes, I swear. Like, I think it's a little upset that, like I'm stuck here at Six Flags Great America in Illinois, and it's not an amusement park that everybody thinks about when they think about top tier amusement parks. Maybe, I mean, it's up there, but it's in Chicago, and it's in kind of a weird location. If you're from the Midwest or Chicago, you know about it. You've been there multiple times. But maybe if you're a roller coaster enthusiast, you want to go to Magic Mountain or Great Adventure before you go to Great America. And that's the best way to describe it. Is it's kind of a little bit pissed off, I think.
We talked about in our Magnum XL 200 episode about how we like a coaster that has character. It just makes it a more enjoyable experience, and that's what this coaster has. Is it has its own character. It is its own personality to it, and that's like that intimidating look when you get up to it. And then when you get up to the top of the hill, we talk about, so this coaster technically is only 165 feet, but that drop is 180 feet, and that's because it goes below grade. So when you come up to this big, intimidating structure, you don't even see all of it. It's like hiding half of its structure friggin' underground. So when you get up on that lift hill and you actually look down, it's the added effect of just, oh my god, this is in a huge drop, and it's 85 degrees, so you're going straight freaking down, and then into a tunnel, so you're going underground. That is one thing we talked about it in our first episode, but I don't think we talked about it enough. Is that first drop is absolute insanity, and it is so good every single time.
Oh, I love that first drop. The fact that it is a 180-foot tall drop at 85 degrees, so not quite 90, but really damn close. It it throws you, especially in the back row. It's an ejector moment. Like, it throws you out of your seat. The other thing I was thinking about too, when I was like looking at doing this episode again, something we didn't talk about is the Goliath name sucks. Like, if you
Oh,
go through and look at the different Goliath roller coasters that are out there, 2 of them are B&M Hypers, and subpar ones at that. One of them's a Batman clone, and one of the worst Batman clones I've ever ridden. Okay. Another one, the one at Magic Mountain, is a Morgan Hyper that some people really don't like. So the Goliath name is, number one, it's been overused by Six Flags. Like, come on, guys, do better with your naming. Like, seriously, it's like Goliath, and then there's Superman rides. You never know what you're actually going to get.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's another issue with this roller coaster, is you mentioned the name Goliath, and people might not necessarily realize what coaster you're actually talking about if they're not super well versed in the roller coaster community, and they know what every Goliath is. And I don't even know. I mean, I had to go look on the internet to figure it out. But some of that, too, this roller coaster suffers from, like, a poor name. Like,
Oh yeah.
holy cow.
In the same vein, but from my perspective, this is the one coaster where I absolutely hate the theme. And it's like, well, first of all, it has hardly any theming at all. It's just the Goliath name, and it has the little sign, but it's like, it's Greek theming in the, like, I think it's like the county fair section of the park. And I'm just like, it, that name doesn't fit at all. And I'm like, I think I know, like, of course, like the whole David versus Goliath thing, and this roller coaster is Goliath, and you're playing the part of David. That makes sense. But other than that, the theming of this ride makes absolutely no sense to me. And I'm like, it's a one ride where I actually think it's really stupid. And again, Six Flags, do better. You can do better than this.
You better talk about this layout quick, otherwise we're going to be like 45 minutes in.
Oh dang. Okay. We like how we joke that this is going to be a shorter episode, too. Okay,
I know.
so we start with this is one of the few RMCs actually that doesn't have a small little pre-lift section. And this one is just a turnaround that leads you straight into that lift hill. Like we said, it's 165 feet up, it's 180 feet down, and that brings you to the top speed of 72 miles per hour on this ride, which leads you into when you come out of that tunnel at the bottom of the drop, you come into an overbanked curve which leads into an airtime hill, which then leads into the dive loop, which goes into the best zero G stall ever, as Gabe would say. And then we talk about how it literally defies gravity, and we talk about with the zero G stall, we want to iterate that it's not hang time. You literally are floating. But anyways, you re-enter the tunnel actually, which leads into another overbanked curve. You have a small airtime hill that leads into the final brakes. And to talk about with this layout, it is very short. It's only like 3,100 feet of track. At 72 miles per hour, it just screams through. And it's the one thing me and Gabe say about this ride. The one thing we can knock it for is it's way too freaking short. I need this ride to be the beast length. Please and thank you.
Well, I think this is another coaster that suffers from a little bit of pacing issues because of that oversized drop on the lift on the first drop and the fact that it is only 3,000 feet. This thing goes through the layout in like 45 seconds, which you could say about Mystic Timbers, but Mystic Timbers feels longer. I know they're
Yes.
about the same length, but Mystic Timbers physically feels like a longer ride experience. Goliath has that higher top speed and it almost hurts the roller coaster a little bit, but it also is just, I mean, it's another pacing monster. And it's another thing I like about roller coasters. I like fast paced rides. But yeah, it's almost too fast for its own good. It's still a really good ride experience. I feel like we're talking too negative on it now.
Oh yeah.
But it's a really good ride experience. Like you said, one of the best zero G stalls to ever exist. It's my second favorite inversion of all time. And this roller coaster layout just needs a little bit more. Think about the other, roller coasters that are this height from RMC. The closest would be Steel Vengeance and Iron Gwazi. So the potential was there to be a ultra elite roller coaster. I think unfortunately it does fall, just like Mystic Timbers. I think it falls a little bit short of that statement. I would put this in the elite category though. I definitely would.
Oh yeah. We talked about this in our previous episode too. What you have to understand is that RMC didn't start building their own roller coasters until about 2011. So this was built in 2014. This is only 3 years into building roller coasters for them. So they really were still experimenting and perfecting their craft. So like Gabe said, this was a really good precursor to what would eventually be Steel Vengeance and Iron Gwazi. So you really feel that kind of experimental feel that this ride has. And we do talk really negatively about it, but you have to understand all of that negative energy is focused on just how gosh darn short this ride is. And I think that speaks to how amazing this ride really is because we just want it to be longer. We want there to be more. You feel it every time you come into that brake run. You're just like, oh, please, I need more. It's so good every time.
All right, but with that, we got to pick a winner here. I'm going to go ahead and go first, and this was an easy one for me. I'm not even going to lie. Mystic Timbers is higher on my top 15 for a reason. Mystic Timbers, I always tell people this, RMC cheats a little bit with their topper track, calling it a fully wooden roller coaster. It is, at the end of the day, a full wooden roller coaster, but it's a little bit of a cheat. Mystic Timbers is a classic wooden roller coaster with a modern day's take on it. And I love wooden roller coasters, so do you. And this is one of my favorites. And in this battle, I gotta take Mystic Timbers on this one.
My pick for this one is going to be Mystic Timbers as well. Like Gabe said, we're Woody's fans, and unfortunately, like he was saying before, in a day and age where it almost seems like not too many Woodies are going to be built anymore, I really love this ride so much, and I hope that it sticks around for a long time, and Goliath would probably either tie it or maybe come a little bit ahead if it just were longer. That's all I wish, if it were just longer, but I really love Mystic Timbers. And then on top of that, if you go back and listen to my episode on Mystic Timbers has some awesome theming. It has a really good theatrical feel to it, and I love it a lot. So Mystic Timbers is going to take it for me.
Yeah, and with that, we're going to wrap this episode up, but we have to talk about next week. Next week is going to be awesome. It is our first Coaster Wars podcast special.
Yeah.
All right. So me and Sam had an unfortunate event happen. So as she was ranking her top 15 and I was redoing my top 15, we ran into a little issue. We both put a certain coaster at number 4. And not only did we put that certain coaster at number 4, we both agreed that it was the best coaster at Cedar Point. So, for once we actually agreed on something. That doesn't happen very often.
No, it does not.
So what we decided to do, because obviously we can't pit the same coaster against itself. I mean, we could, but
that wouldn't be a very interesting episode.
No, we are going to take that coaster and compare it to every coaster at Cedar Point. And we're going to talk about why we think it's the best coaster at Cedar Point. A little bit of a hot take. It's probably not the coaster you're expecting. But it's going to be an hour-long special. We're going to record it as an hour-long episode. And we're going to talk about maybe not every coaster at Cedar Point, but at least 6 or 7 of the big, most important ones there. It's gonna be a great episode. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, and it'll be really interesting, I think, to see how we discuss an entire park full of roller coasters instead of just the 2 that we picked for the Coaster Wars. And like you said, we'll probably do a quick rundown of all the coasters that Cedar Point does feature. But if anyone knows anything, Cedar Point has one of the biggest lineups out there. So we're gonna have to pick the kind of contenders for the top spot, and then, like he said, we're gonna go into why we think the coaster that we did pick is in fact the best coaster at Cedar Point.
Yeah, and who knows, we might even have enough time that we get to talk about Top Thrill 2, which would be fun as well. Because I'm not excited for Top Thrill 2 at all. I am disappointed in Cedar Point with that roller coaster, but that'll be for another time. With that, we will see you guys all next week for the Cedar Point special.
See everybody next week.